Ladies and gentlemen, it's currently 2024 at the time of me hitting record on this video, and for about 20 to 25 years now, chess engines have been better than human beings. And in particular, over the last 10 to 15 years, it's gotten worse and worse. However, this industry is AI-proof. Nobody in the chess world is striking outside because AI is posing any sort of existential threat. People still want to watch human beings play chess because we suck, and it's hilarious. But sometimes our top engines play against each other. And every single year, there is a thing called TCEC, or TCEC, or Top Chess Engine Championship, where the best engines in the world go to battle. And in particular, in the final, we frequently see Stockfish and Leela. And that is the purpose of today's video. I'm going to be showing you and breaking down, hopefully in a human and understandable way, what happens when two 3600 ELO engines play against each other. Now, a quick caveat. The computers don't play from the standard chess position, move one, and do whatever they want, because if they did that, they would actually draw probably close to 100% of their games. So instead, some of you may have heard me say this already, some of you may have not, they pair openings. So they say, hey, me and you, we're going to play the same opening, and we're both going to get a game with white and black. We're going to see what happens. So, without further ado, I'm going to show you 3 games, which are absolutely fascinating. And maybe I will make another update. It's currently in the middle of the TCEC Super Final. And I'll probably give you an update. Stockfish generally tends to win. The final game of this match was a Caro-Kann. And an absolutely brutal and an absolutely fascinating one. But first, e4. Now, in this very first game, the bots played an Alekhines defense. This one is fascinating because they followed mainline theory. They actually followed the most popular way to play the Alekhines defense, and Stockfish might have literally refuted the entire opening. So, allow us to proceed. Knight to f6, pawn to e5 attacking the knight, now d4, and now an opening called the 4 pawns attack. One of the most aggressive ways to meet the Alekhines defense. The 4 pawns attack is also available in the King's Indian defense. After d4, knight f6, c4, g6, knight c3, bishop g7. I'm not trying to show off my knowledge to you. I'm giving you different openings. But as you can see here, it's like a 0.3, 0.4 advantage, whereas here, in the Alekhines defense, it's nearly double that because black wasted a bunch of time in the opening moving the pieces around. But what black does in this opening is target the center with the knights, right? White plays bishop to e3. White does not play knight f3 because black will pin and immediately develop. So bishop e3, black goes here, and now, and only now that you saw this move, you commit your knight, okay? And so this position is where they left the opening book. Everything up to this point was pre-programmed, and then here, black played this move bishop g4 because it's actually such a good idea to pin this knight that you can spend the second move doing it. Now, I think actually technically here is where they left known theory. Humans have entered this position thousands of times. I myself have had this position thousands of times. No. Probably about 2 or 3 dozen times because I've been playing this with white as well. And generally black will take this knight. You actually have to take with the pawn because if you take with the bishop, you lose the pawn on c4. More on that later. And speaking of moron, yeah, we're all morons compared to this. And here, Leela plays queen d7. So Leela is trying to put some pressure on this pawn. Completely reasonable. Castles. And now, humans castle sometimes here. Rook to d8. Now, there is a major problem in this position. The major problem is I can't move this bishop. I can't take back the knight because you're targeting this. So what I do here with white is I frequently play a move like b3. Black plays bishop b4, bishop e7, right? And now I'm like, I'm gonna go here, and then here, and then here, and then start some sort of attack. Stockfish plays knight g5, which on this Stockfish, on the one on my desktop, like right now on chess.com, it doesn't even understand this move. It doesn't get it. I mean, if you look at it, you'll get it, obviously. The threat is, that's the threat. However, it loses a pawn. It loses a pawn. You can't do this because of knight takes c4. You can't take the knight because, and you can't take the bishop because you get giga, mega, super, omega, super forked. So, Stockfish just hung a pawn? No. I told you more on this later. It just goes back. It allows the opponent to take a pawn, and it backs up, and not only does it back up, it blocks its own rook. And yet, this is what former coach of mine, Polish Grandmaster Wojciech Miranda, he used to call this a time stop. I mean, he probably still calls it a time stop, but back in the day, he would call this a time stop. Might do another lesson for him as part of my recent Road to GM series. This is a position where time freezes, and you have this interaction between all the pieces, and black can't exploit anything. Like, now I'm threatening to take, so you have to take me. I take with the queen, and you're kicked out. Now you're kicked out back to your position. But if you go back to your position, right, I'm gonna attack you down the center line, like this. So Stockfish finds this ridiculously deep idea, and instead Leela targets the knight, knight b6, and now, knowing our opponent is one move away from exhaling, we say no thank you. We don't worry about the pawn hanging on d4. Losing g7 is much more valuable. And this right here against Stockfish, that one move, that's the admission of death. That's it. You lost. You lost. I mean, this one only thinks it's +1, and it's +1 with black being up a pawn, so it's a massive, massive positional advantage. This is the end of the game. Now, some of you are like probably mind blown by that, because as humans, we have so much work to do here, and just in general in society and the planet. As a human here, you might play rook d1, and very quickly your advantage is gone. Like, you get hit with this move, you come back, black finds a way to consolidate, you don't get any advantage. So the engine here now plays queen h5, eyeing this, and disallowing h5. I just told you, disallowing h5. So these pieces can't get active. Now we have knight d5, and come on, look at that. I mean, that is, can't take, that's a mate right there on f7. So black plays queen e8, and now Stockfish just takes and just backs up. You can't take on d4 because knight c3 attacks the rook and opens up an attack over here. So queen g4, and you just basically are making fun of the fact that black will never get the rook in the game. And Stockfish is so good with this element of time. It's just slowly, methodically improving its position, all for the cost of one pawn. It's still a pawn down, but black can't back up anymore. And here, Leela decides it doesn't want to repeat the moves. It actually just gives up the knight, the rook, for the knight. It decides it's better off playing like this. Now, had it gone back to d7, Stockfish would have either played d5, and maybe this is a winning breakthrough. I guess evidently it's not, because the evaluation is not spiking. I think they would have probably repeated once, and then Stockfish would have moved forward. So it would have played like rook d2, and maybe something over here, maybe it would have doubled. And instead of that, yeah, Leela decides it's already time to hit the panic button. And now, watch as seemingly nothing happens, but Stockfish finds the winning configuration. Basically, Leela says, this is a draw. You cannot break through. I'm completely defended. Nothing in my position is unprotected, except the rook, but you can't win it. But watch as Stockfish just methodically, slowly, patiently, just completely shuts down all the play, and then finds a slow series of infiltrations. So it infiltrates to b7. Okay, now it plays queen a6, queen d3, queen c2. It's gonna re-infiltrate. It's gonna find its spot. It's gonna take a little. There it is. It infiltrates again. It goes to this endgame. Decides that this is the winning idea. Now it targets the pawn, inducing black to come forward. The more that black comes forward, the better it's going to be to win this game in the long run. Now it trades the bishops, and now it's gonna go to the correct winning endgame. So it's gonna trade those pawns, creating that weakness. b4. Now it's going here. Now, how is white going to win this position? Absolutely fascinating. Stockfish finds the deep, dark forest. It needs to get its king to e8. How the heck are we going to do that? How's that? What? What? We can't teleport. We don't have a first class ticket. Here's the thing. That's the weak base of the pawn chain, and the knight can't protect it. See, if the black knight could somehow hang out somewhere, like on the g5 score, you can't win, because you can't get to the pawn. And now Stockfish trades, and just, this is so, look at this king walk. Just absolutely gangster, check, boom. And what's funny is that this doesn't help. I gotta sneeze. Allergies are killing me. You can't move. Black is in what we call a Zugzwang. Ridiculous. And king h7, you actually just take. And what's funny is, it's going to be a promotion too. D5, G4, D6, G3, D7, D8. Look at that. You both made a queen. Congrats. I mate you. Heartbreaking. So knight G3. The king makes it all the way to E8. You take, and now you pick up the last pawn, and this is a completely winning endgame. The pawn promotes, and black resigns. What a game. I was absolutely fascinated by this. Like, it just literally chucked a pawn for nothing. All Stockfish needed was to make sure the opponent could not castle. The second king f8 was played, the game was lost. Because black falls behind so drastically in development that the cost of the pawn is not felt at all. Now, next game. By the way, Leela did not beat Stockfish in the Alekhine. They drew. So Stockfish won that pair. Now, in this game, they made them play a Peer's Defense, which if you ran a simulation of like a million top engine games and let them choose the best moves, the move d6 would literally never happen. Out of a million games. Now, maybe some of you watching this are like inclined to engines and inclined to statistics, and you guys know this stuff, and you say, no, the chance is not 0. It's higher than 0. Well, it's probably higher than 0 if you do all the numbers. But if you ask them to play the best moves, they would play e5 and c5. And beyond e5 and c5, e6 is a better first move, and even c6. Like, I think the French and d6 are like not comparable. So they let them do this. Now white plays the Austrian attack, and we get this line, bishop d3, very solid, very reliable line. e5, take, and now the top line, according to the engine, and the most common move in the database is knight to h5 here, putting the knight on the outskirts of the board, and then, as you can see, it's a game. It's a game. Now, they asked these engines to play knight d5, which is the second best move, and I just found this game very instructive. Knight d5 is definitely not what humans would play. Like, most humans, I think, would put the knight on h5 here because they know the theory. So I'm not, like, I don't love this game because they're kind of deliberately forcing the engine to play a bad move, whereas in the previous game, this is all theory. Like, all of this has been played. Here, they go here, and it's a slight, weakness, and white gets this very strong center, but it's important to understand, humans lose this game half the time. Like, white's score in the database here, in the human database, is like 53%. So humans are losing 47% of the time. You put engines here, engines probably win 9 out of 10 games with white. And the one game they didn't win, I don't know, there was an electrical surge. So the point is, this is very, very powerful. The engine knows that c5 and f6 are basically black's only attempt at stirring up any trouble. So knowing that, and knowing that black has to take a step backwards, knowing that black has to deal with the center, you play h4. Because this is what engines love to do. Castling goes out the window. Out the window. All right? c5, now c4. The most important thing for a successful attack is a clamped center. A center where the opponent cannot break through. This is very instructive because the less mobility the opponent has in the center of the board in a chess game, the less they can create counterplay. When you're isolating your opponent like this, pushing them back, they can't do too much. Now, bishop f3 is an idea, but then I just take with the pawn, which is why in this position, Stockfish doesn't even stop. It just goes for, you can't take that. Bishop, of course I'm going to take it with the rook. Are you crazy? Obviously, my bishop is a beast. And here the top line of the engine, by the way, is just bishop f4, just sitting and relaxing. Queen e4 is now going to be mate pretty soon. So black goes here, f5, bring the queen back. And look, you induce this move, so now black cannot fight back. Black plays e6. First of all, you can play d6, but that allows the knight to get back into, this is just castle. Rook h1, rook h4, these are the ideas. This is what's flowing, right? So h5, black plays e6, and I mean, bishop g5. First, I don't even understand bishop g5. Like, I don't, what? I'm playing as a human here. I'm gonna take. I gotta open my, no, bishop g5. Pawn takes d5. H takes g6 now. Long castle, just every piece is playing. Open rook. Bishop f6 is a massive problem. Bishop h6 is a massive problem. Now, I love, again, you give Stockfish a position like this, the accuracy with which it will play this attack is brutal. Plays bishop to h6. Bishop, it's down 2 pawns. It's down 2 pawns. Where is the attack? There is no attack. You can't even play queen h2. You know what the best move in this position is? You're down 2 pawns and it's plus 0.7. The best move is just play king b1. Just get off the checking lines What do you do with black? Where do you go? Where do you move? Nah, you move. Knight c6. Okay. Now I regain control of h2. So wherever you move, I go here. You obviously cannot take on c4. That will only help me. So you play bishop to f6. And now I will continue to do things over here. Bishop to g5. I'm just going to continue to create threats. But the question is, where's the mate? Right, as a human, you go here. Bishop h6, queen h6, the king runs. You give a check trying to get it to escape. You know, you go here, king c7, you take another pawn, that goes back. You can even win another pawn attacking the queen, but after queen e7, rook e7, somehow this is the best you're going to get. You won a bunch of pawns back. As a human, this is a very playable position. But Stockfish ain't doing none of that. But Stockfish is just going to play rook h3. It's just going to improve its position. It's just going to improve. That's it. It's just going to improve. So what does it do? It plays rook h3. And now with the doubling incoming, now Leela takes bishop c4. And Leela goes for counterplay. Counterplay. Trying to create some problems. Now you play bishop h6. What's the difference? The difference is this area of the board opened up compared to what I showed you, right? In that position where this is kind of closed. In the game, all of this now happens. Queen h6, queen g5, queen d5. Difference. Difference. Now there is this sequence. Takes, takes, and this is a very different simplification of an endgame. You take on b5. You brought the king in front of the knight. Now you take the rook. Now you have to win this position. By the way, we are far away from a win. In fact, a human could lose this endgame with white. How? Let's just say something like b4, okay? Now suddenly you're under pressure, right? So you play a3. Suddenly you're getting hit with a5. You might lose the pawn completely. And then if you're not careful and you lose this pawn, I mean, in a worst case scenario, absolute worst case, I'm not saying this is going to happen, but in an absolute worst case scenario, you get something like this. You get two pawns rolling down the board. I mean, it's absolutely possible to lose as a human. So rook c1, and now I just love watching Stockfish endgames. I mean, I love watching Stockfish win in attacking games, but it paralyzes the opponent's king on the edge of the board, right? Freezes the king completely. King a2, slow improvements. Now it's got to make a breakthrough. Targets both pawns. Rook c4, it's targeting everything. Rook c3, what's the idea? Where's the winning idea? It's to slowly improve. By the way, it's giving up the pawn on f4 completely because it wants to infiltrate on d6. That's the winning idea. Rook d3, rook d4, you just take. C d4, king b3. You know why this is winning? Because the king is gone. Stockfish wins this endgame by paralyzing the black king along the edge of the board. And if the king cannot participate in an endgame, you lose. Because the rook hunts down the knight and the two pawns on his own, like a Bond movie. And this is exactly what happens in this game. Leela slowly realizes it's going to have to probably allow the rook infiltration. Rook d5. Rook gets in, and Leela's like, I don't want to trade. Well, if you don't trade, you're going to get mated. Now we take, and this is just an easy win. I take on f7. I'm going to win the other pawn as well. There it is. I'm going to win the pawn. And now I don't even have to wait. I'm going to win on the a5 pawn. Now I'm going to come back for the g pawn. My pawn's a passer, and just incredible. I love, it completely froze the king, and it made, yeah, I'm just wild. Like, absolutely wild. These games are so fascinating. Like, the way it just locks everything down, closes the center, goes for this attack, and then, like, navigates the complexity of the position, waits for the opponent to overextend with b5. Leela thought it was just going to lose if the attack came in. And by the way, like, it was right, you know? For instance, let's say b5 and rook h1. You know what the idea of all this is? Like, you know what the winning idea here is? The winning idea is just queen h8. Like, you need backup. You needed the second rook so that this was made. Like, that was Stockfish's idea. So seeing that that was on the way, that's why Leela changed the position. These engines don't really blunder. It's all just a mix of evaluating a circumstance in the future. And now we got to look at a ridiculous game. Like, they made them play the Carl Khan, and I was fascinated. Advanced variation, right? The best. It's the best according to Top Engine Play because space is very important for computers, as we see, right? Dominant space advantage in this game. Look, in the center, right? Dominant space advantage. In this game, dominant space advantage. Look at this, dominant space advantage. All right, all of this has been played before. All of this. Castles. Now here, black should already begin to fight back with c5 or h6 to get out of the way of this move. So I used to play knight e7 in this position, and my idea with knight e7 in this position is that, let's say white plays like rook e1, I like to go here. And then I would quickly go for f6 and trade the bishop for the knight, which is why the best line here for white is this move knight h4, just saying I want the bishop. And humans here for the longest time just retreat, because they're like, you know what, I'm solid. And as a human, this position is completely playable, completely. And this is where the engines left opening theory. Now the best move according to deeper analysis is this, immediately creating counterplay, because otherwise, watch what happens. So, takes. Computers are out of their prep. This is a rock-solid position for white. And black. Knight d2. Black plays knight f5. Look at how high the evaluation already is for a computer. All based on space and two bishops. Now black tries to trade some pieces. Makes sense. g3. Take me. I don't want to take you. Black needs to trade pieces. Black doesn't have a lot of space, right? So black is trying to get rid of some pieces, so the spatial disadvantage is not felt. Now bishop e7. White plays a king move, just like improving the positioning of the pieces and defending the light squares. And Leela continues to try to trade pieces. The less pieces on the board, the less the pressure will be felt when you have a spatial disadvantage. c3, bishop c1, rook c1. Okay, the position surely is better for white because a bit more space. But if I turn this off, do you know how many of you would lose with white? I would lose with white if I played a strong enough player with black. You got so long to go. Black plays queen e7. White plays rook e1. Now apparently, castling short is already losing. Completely. Because of h4. And the same kind of h4 in the previous game that we saw, this is just game over. Like, you have to generate this, and I will just very slowly and methodically prepare h5. Not right away. I'm not going to do it right away because I don't want to take with my bishop. My bishop's not the one leading the attack. So losing, you can't do that. You're just going to lose, apparently. Which is why Leela castles long. Which is why Stockfish just says, well, I'm a principled engine, you know? I know about attacking on opposite sides. King b8. And finally, this move c5 comes, right? Finally. A dream scenario for black would be to lock the position completely. I mean, the engine also just wants to win a pawn. But let's just say you can't do that and you get this. Like in a perfect situation, everything closes down, black can't lose. c5. Now watch just how effortlessly Stockfish carves up this position. It takes on c5. It splits these pawns. Now again, to me, this is obviously better for white, but it's pretty far-fetched. Like, as a human, I want to go c4. Okay, great, that happens, yes. dc4, rook c4, rook d7. Where is the breakthrough? Well, let's go here, but what about knight d3? That's what happens. Rook d1, rook d8. Where's the breakthrough? How do you do anything in this position? First of all, black is threatening knight f4 check. Let's say you go bishop e4, knight f4 check wins the rook. Now, you could have went bishop e2 as well. I'm still going to go knight f4, and then I'm going to trade every piece. Well, you built all this pressure up, and black's only method of counterplay was this move c5. You can't play f6 because I'm going to win the pawn on e6. So you knew that. That's why black had to go c5. You created all these problems, and now the winning idea is hidden in the position. It's hidden. The winning idea is bishop takes b7. What? Well, one thing is very simple. If you take with the rook, what happens is you end up in an endgame down a pawn and with king problems. For the computer, it's +3. But what if king takes? If king takes, check. If you block, I take, and you're pinned, which is why you have to move your king. And now I enable rook b4 by sacrificing my rook. Now you have to sacrifice your queen or you get mated. And now, again, Stockfish uses all of its advantages, transforms the game into a winning endgame. Queen versus 2 rooks is an eternal debate. What's better? What's better depends on the position. And right now, because white has so many pawns, the more pawns, the more powerful the queen. The more targets for the queen, the less targets for the rooks. Whereas if you removed all the pawns, the rooks would be able to defend everything very well. Watch as a 3600 elo bot shows you how to play the endgame. All right? It gets in on g7. Now it starts creating a pawn imbalance. It's got the outside pass pawn ready to go. Outside pass pawn, invaluable asset in the endgame. Rook d2, g4, slow and steady, defending its king at all times. It's ready to go. Rook d2 check. Rook d3, counterplay constantly being created on the pawn. King g4, rook d1, back rank problems. Now the queen sneaks out. You don't want to get hit from the other side. Put the king on f4. Rook d4, king e3, patient game. Rooks are disconnected. They got to go back and defend, but now queen c5 check. Now the king is a target. Now the king is a target and so are both rooks. So we give a couple more checks. Now we bring out the king again. Now black has to make a move. Queen a4, targeting some stuff over there. Queen e4, targeting stuff on the diagonal. Now we push. Now we're 2 squares away from queening. Rook h8. Every move. The only winning move in this position. The only winning move. King to e3. Why? Because you cannot take the pawn. If you take the pawn, queen b4, your king cannot get off the back rank. Queen f8 and queen h6. That is... What? You know how many humans would play king g5 here? Then rook c1. And I told you, the rooks are resilient. They're stopping the pawn. You can stop rook to g1, but you cannot stop rook to h1. And you lose the pawn. This is the only winning move. How? Of course, black does not fall for that, but now check. Now queen back to f4. And now the problem is pawn to h7. And by forcing the king to the corner, you still defend the pawn. That's so deep and ridiculous. Queen h6, you lose the... How can you lose a pawn with a check in an endgame? The point is, this looks like it defends, but now the king is activated. Now the king is in. And you get here, and it looks like black is going to survive. Black is not going to survive. Again, because of this tactic. Now the king runs that way. So we give a check. We keep the king out in the open. And now we begin operation number 2. If rook h7, you give a check on b3, and anywhere the king moves, you lose a rook. If king a7, queen e3, anywhere you move, you lose a rook. You go king b8, check. Let's say king here, queen c5. From this position, Stockfish calculates every combination of moves, and in every single one of them, black loses a rook. King to g7, the king has made it. Now it's just a matter of time. The pawns are falling. You give up the h-pawn for the 2 passers, and we start anew. And the problem with bots is they have unlimited energy. They're like toddlers. Queen c7, and that's it. You start a brand new phase of the game. The engine is not like, oh no, I lost my h-pawn. Nope. Look at, I mean, this is, look at queen d8, it's ridiculous. And it wins, and this is the... And the craziest part is, this is all from this opening where it just evaluates that black is much worse. It needed, you know, black needed to play c5. I guess that's the only way to make the advanced Caro-Kann tenable. At the engine level, the advanced Caro-Kann is almost an auto win for white, which is sickening. Sickening stuff. That's all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed. Do let me know in the comments. I will add this to our engine playlist here. AI chess engine playlist on the channel. And that's all. Get out of here.